After the popularity of the Jinzhou barbecue on the internet since March, the number of local tourists has surged. Data shows that in March alone, Jinzhou received over 4.8 million out-of-town visitors, an increase of 134% compared to the previous year, and tourism revenue increased by 60%. The television flickered with light and shadow, broadcasting current events. On the coffee table were a half-eaten takeout box and a half-empty bottle of beer. Lying on the sofa, Yi Xingqian's expression was dazed. "I've been reborn?" Yi Xingqian took out his phone to check the time. April 26, 2023, 11:57:31. He quickly got up, rushed to the villa's balcony, and looked outside. The yard was filled with blooming roses, the grass outside the yard was lush green, and the artificial lake in the distance rippled. Warm and moist air, fragrant with flowers, wafted over. Rubbing his eyes and confirming that he wasn't mistaken, Yi Xingqian's face showed an excited expression, and his body trembled with excitement. "I really have been reborn." May 26, 2023, exactly at noon, 1 month later, the sun's activity suddenly weakened, sunlight became extremely faint, global temperatures dropped drastically, and the world entered an ice age. Temperatures at the poles plummeted to a terrifying -128 degrees Celsius. Even in the once hottest equatorial regions, temperatures reached -80 to 90 degrees, becoming forbidden zones for life. In just 1 week, half of the world's population froze to death, and flora and fauna were nearly extinct due to the extreme cold. Because of the severe cold, almost all production activities came to a halt, resources became extremely scarce, and the world plunged into panic. For the sake of survival, humanity completely abandoned moral boundaries and began to desperately seize resources, killing each other. People were willing to commit murder and robbery for a warm piece of clothing or a piece of bread to fill their stomachs. And Yi Xingqian, tricked by the person he once loved most, opened the door and allowed a group of people to enter and plunder all the food resources. Once all the food was gone, it was at the suggestion of the woman he had loved that the group of people killed him. "Chun Rower, I'm not finished with you. And those who stole my resources, those who ate my food, you all wait for me." Thinking of his past life, Yi Xingqian's expression turned fierce. He vividly remembered a group of people first cutting off his legs, the intense pain, extreme despair, and fear. Just recalling it made his heart turn cold. "This time, I'll survive properly. I can't have the slightest compassion for anyone, and I definitely can't trust anyone." Yi Xingqian gritted his teeth and admonished himself. It was because of his saintly heart in his previous life that he ended up being divided by others. He wouldn't allow such a thing to happen again in this life. There was only 1 month left. The most important thing now was to stockpile resources, build a safe haven, and ensure his survival in the apocalypse. Yi Xingqian was a second-generation wealthy individual. His parents operated a large chain supermarket group, and they had a massive logistics and warehousing center in Jinghai City, filled with all sorts of daily necessities. Unfortunately, his parents had passed away due to a car accident 6 months ago, and now he was managing this large chain supermarket. His current task was to transfer all these resources to a safe location accessible only to him. Before the rebirth, the sun had shown no signs of returning to normal for a full year. Nobody knew how long the ice age would last. For a person to survive, they must have sufficient resources. Otherwise, they would freeze or starve to death. Additionally, there had to be plenty of entertainment facilities, or else prolonged confinement in a closed space would undoubtedly affect a person's mental state. Just then, Yi Xingqian's head throbbed. He felt the space before his eyes distort and a translucent, enormous space appeared. A sensation of being closely connected. Naturally, information about this mysterious space emerged in his mind. It was a staggering 300 hectares in size, unbelievably vast. "After my rebirth, I've gained superpowers ahead of time?" Yi Xingqian was overjoyed. For some unknown reason, after the apocalypse arrived, certain individuals gained superpowers. Yi Xingqian was one of them. 6 months into the Ice Age, he accidentally awakened the spatial ability, allowing him to communicate with another dimension. However, the spatial ability he awakened in his previous life couldn't hold a candle to the current one. He didn't know if it was due to his rebirth that his spatial ability awakened earlier, and its capacity was extraordinarily vast, spanning 300 hectares. With this enormous dimension, survival in the apocalypse would pose no problem. However, he needed to test whether he could store items within it. He approached the coffee table and began to experiment. Instantly, the coffee table disappeared from sight, appearing in the otherworldly space. It really works. Yi Xingqian was overjoyed. With a thought, the coffee table vanished from the otherworldly space and reappeared before his eyes. Great! This is truly amazing. A bold idea emerged in Yi Xingqian's mind. He planned to transfer all the supplies from his logistics center into this otherworldly space. Then, he would place large orders with suppliers until the entire otherworldly space was filled. This way, he would become the wealthiest person during the apocalypse, never needing to worry about survival. Just at that moment, Yi Xingqian's phone rang. He picked it up and saw it was a call from Chenroer. "You wicked woman." Yi Xingqian didn't answer and hung up directly. Chenroer was the campus belle of Jinghai University. She was stunningly beautiful, and her figure was explosively attractive in his previous life. Yi Xingqian was a lackey for her, sparing no expense to pursue her. He spent millions on her. However, Chenroer always kept him hanging, neither accepting nor rejecting him. She treated him like an ATM, a backup plan. In reality, Chenroer had always been on the lookout for even wealthier second-generation individuals, not paying him any mind. They had never even held hands. But when the apocalypse arrived, Chenroer threw herself into the arms of a few burly men, strong enough to kill and rob, more disgusting than a prostitute. Later on, she tricked him into opening the door, letting those people into his house, resulting in the horrifying events that followed. Yi Xingqian wished he could find Chenroer and kill her now to avenge his previous self. But obviously, it wasn't possible yet. The apocalypse hadn't arrived, and the world still had some semblance of order. If he were to commit murder, he'd end up in a cell. He could only wait until the apocalypse descended to do as he pleased. Hanging up the phone, Yi Xingqian immediately left the villa and drove toward the most upscale Shangri-La Hotel in Jinghai City. Those who could afford to dine at the Shangri-La Hotel were not just rich, but at the very least, they were quite well off. During lunchtime, the hotel lobby was fully occupied. All the diners were elegantly dressed, savoring their food with refinement. Hurrying into the scene with an anxious expression, Yi Xingqian stood out among these people. As he took his seat, a delicate female waiter in a gray-black petite suit and holding a thick menu approached. "Hello, sir. Here's the menu." Before the waiter could finish her sentence, Yi Xingqian interrupted. "No need to look. Bring me a portion of every dish on the menu." The waiter hesitated. "Sir, are you hosting guests? How many people in total?" "Just me." The waiter hesitated again, slightly furrowing her brows as she cautioned. "Sir, there are over 100 dishes on the menu. You probably won't be able to finish them all on your own. I suggest I don't need your advice. Serve me all the dishes on the menu." As I said, quickly, Yi Xingqian interrupted the waiter again. Hearing this, the waiter couldn't help but size up Yi Xingqian, silently speculating if he was up to some mischief. After all, who would go to such an extent as to order everything from the menu? How could anyone eat that much? After a moment of hesitation, the waiter cautiously reminded, "Sir, ordering all the dishes on this menu would probably cost over 500,000. At this point, the waiter stopped speaking, but her message was quite clear. A meal costing hundreds of thousands, can you afford it? Being the most high-end hotel in Jinghai City, they did offer extremely expensive ingredients like bluefin tuna, caviar, and matsutake mushrooms. Spending a few $100,000 on a meal was normal, but this kind of extravagant spending was far from normal. She even began to suspect that Yi Xingqian might have something wrong with his head. Why now? Their conversation had caught the attention of diners at nearby tables, who were now looking curiously at Yi Xingqian. Yi Xingqian knew what they were thinking and said impatiently, "What? Afraid I won't pay? Bring the bill quickly. I can pay in advance." The waiter was momentarily taken aback and dismissed the thought that Yi Xingqian couldn't pay. However, she still found it difficult to accept this situation. Her tone grew slightly sharper as she cautioned, "Sir, it's not that I doubt your ability to pay, but..." Yi Xingqian furrowed his brow and impatiently said, "Enough with the nonsense. Bring the food." The waiter was left speechless. So much food for one person? How incredibly wealthy must he be? He must be one of those eccentric rich kids. The people at surrounding tables began whispering among themselves, expressing shock, confusion, and mostly disdain. The first time I've seen someone order based on the entire menu. It's way too extravagant. He must have struck gold. He seems to have some issues. Even with money, you shouldn't spend it like this. Ever heard of sudden wealth syndrome? Some people, when they go from poor to rich, indulge in this kind of revengeful spending due to psychological problems. The diners spoke in low voices, so Yi Xingqian couldn't hear them clearly. But he knew they weren't kind words. However, he didn't care. These people wouldn't understand the emotions of someone who hadn't had a satisfying meal for over a year, someone for whom even a packet of instant noodles was a luxury. How it felt when the aroma of food wafted from the hall was a sentiment they couldn't comprehend. A month from now, they would experience the agonies of hunger and cold, a state worse than death. Moreover, at least half of the people here would die within the first week after doomsday arrived, and only a handful might survive after a month. Soon, dishes and food were placed on the table one after another. Wei Xingqian started to eat heartily, his manner resembling that of a starving ghost reborn, which drew constant disdainful glances from those around him. Haha, look at him eat. He's like a refugee from Africa. He looks like he's never seen the world. He must have been really poor before. I even doubt if he really has the money to pay the bill. The free meal at Shangri-La Hotel isn't that great. If he can't afford the bill, he might end up washing dishes for a lifetime. Amidst the discussions, a slightly surprised and mostly angry voice suddenly rang out. Yi Xingqian, you ignore my calls and dare to gorge yourself here alone? All eyes turned towards the source, where they saw a woman striding over with a furious expression on her face. This woman was tall and seductive, particularly her long, shapely legs. As she hadn't worn stockings, her fair, almost translucent skin was visible. Her black high heels revealed her smooth feet. Her chest was ample, and her pert buttocks had a tantalizing curve. She was undoubtedly a dreamy enchantress any man would yearn for, igniting suggestive thoughts. Most importantly, her young and beautiful face adorned with rimless glasses had an aura of destruction. Everyone was captivated by her presence, their eyes filled with suppressed desires. Some couldn't help but swallow a few times. Wei Xingqian simply glanced at her disdainfully, his disgust not hidden at all. Without a word, he continued eating, ignoring her completely. This scene puzzled the surrounding diners. So aloof. That's unexpected. A goddess of such quality was a rare find indeed. Even Chen Rower was taken aback. Was this the same lapdog I knew? Suddenly, Chen Rower's anger escalated. Today was her birthday. Just 3 days ago, Yi Xingqian had promised to host a birthday celebration for her at Shangri-La Hotel, saying he had a surprise for her to SO. She had come to Shangri-La to check the menu and book a private room. She called the cash machine, referring to Yi Xingqian, to come over. However, she hadn't expected that Yi Xingqian, the obedient lapdog who usually answered her calls with excitement, would actually ignore more than a dozen calls from her. Since when did this lapdog become so stubborn? Yi Xingqian, I'm talking to you. Can't you hear me? Chen Rower gritted her teeth and said. Why Yi Xingqian couldn't be bothered with her nonsense. He coldly replied, Get lost. Don't disturb my meal. With the apocalypse looming, women like Chen Rower would fall to their knees for half a packet of instant noodles. Moreover, in Yi Xingqian's eyes, she was already a dead person. He felt only disgust and hatred towards her now. The thought of having him grovel like before was out of the question. Hearing his words, Chen Rower froze on the spot. She never could have expected that the lapdog who used to follow her every command would utter such words, especially in front of so many people. Her fury reached a boiling point, causing her to lose all sense of reason. She screamed like a shrew, Yi Xingqian, you jerk. How dare you treat me like this? Don't even dream of having me as your girlfriend in this lifetime. At her words, Yi Xingqian's expression turned dark, and he slowly stood up. Girlfriend? Yi Xingqian sneered. Do you think I was blind before to have chosen you, this despicable person, as my girlfriend? Being called a despicable person in front of so many people, Chenroer felt like a cat with its tail stepped on, thoroughly infuriated. Yi Xingqian, you bastard. On what basis do you call me a despicable person? Chenroer screamed, instantly drawing the attention of everyone in the hall, who curiously looked at the two of them. Fine. Let me tell you why you're a despicable person. Yi Xingqian coldly hummed and pointed his finger at Chenroer. This handbag is from Prada, worth 120,000, and I bought it for you. The fruit-themed smartphone, 20,000 yuan, also bought by me. The Hermes limited edition dress you're wearing, worth 280,000. I bought it for you too. The Porsche Panamera you're driving, worth 1.98 million. I bought that for you too. With every statement Yi Xingqian made, Chenroer's complexion became uglier, eventually turning as dark as water, her face burning with pain. Yi Xingqian, stop it. Chenroer shouted in anger. However, Yi Xingqian remained unmoved. Why should I stop? Over these years, I've spent no less than 5 million on you. He continued with gritted teeth. And what about you? You've kept me hanging, unwilling to accept being my girlfriend, treating me like an ATM. If you're not despicable, then who is? By this point, people around them were pointing and whispering, their eyes filled with disdain, making her feel utterly humiliated. She hurriedly tried to explain, I was just testing you. Yi Xingqian sneered, testing? When I shower you with gifts and money, you don't hesitate at all. You speak so boldly about your materialistic desires. You're truly a gold digger. You? Chenroer was trembling with anger, but she couldn't find a retort in the moment. Yet Yi Xingqian wasn't finished. Why stop there? You've been dating another wealthy guy at the same time, just like you've been stringing me along. You made him buy you a house. Is that not problematic for someone despicable like you? As soon as these words came out, even the male diners who had been whispering before couldn't hold back anymore, openly berating them. Look at how deceiving this guy appears. Who would have thought he's involved with such a gold-digging woman? She has no shame. Even a prostitute is more dignified than her. At least they're straightforward. I can't believe we're seeing a scheming woman like this in real life, not just in soap operas. No wonder this guy ordered so much food. He must be eating away his pain after being hurt by her. I misjudged this guy. He's not just a poor guy who suddenly became rich. He's been hurt. Even many female diners couldn't help but join the criticism. A woman who stoops this low is truly embarrassing. If you won't accept someone, why take 5 million from them? This shameless, despicable person, she's even daring to scold others. How thick-skinned can she be? Hearing the discussions around her, Chenroer couldn't stand it any longer and angrily glared at Yi Xingqian before leaving with her head lowered. Seeing this scene, Yi Xingqian felt a sense of relief. But this was far from enough. This was just the beginning. He would slowly take revenge for the grudges from his past life. After eating a few more bites, Yi Xingqian paid the bill, packed up the remaining dishes, and left without wasting anything. Having experienced the apocalypse, he understood the value of food more than anyone. Then, amidst the complex gazes of the people, he left the Shangri-La Hotel in the post-apocalyptic world. Having resources wasn't enough. There also needed to be a secure place to hide. Otherwise, everything you possessed could be taken by stronger people, or even worse, you could become food. Thus, building an absolutely secure doomsday fortress was the most important thing now. Yi Xingqian drove to the Longdun Security Company. This security company was among the top 3 nationwide, if not the top, not just in Jinghai City. Without wasting time, he found their manager and skipped the pleasantries. Can you build a fortress? He asked. The manager stared blankly for about 3 seconds before widening his eyes and asking, What? Yi Xingqian patiently explained, I'm talking about a doomsday fortress, the kind that can withstand a nuclear explosion. Do you know about that? Of course, my requirements aren't that high. It doesn't need to withstand explosives or wrecking balls. It just needs sufficient hardness. The manager stared again for 3 seconds, then called out to the security guards. Where are they? Security. Security. Get this person out of here. Yi Xingqian could understand his reaction. Anyone would suspect someone's sanity facing such a client. The best way to deal with this situation was to take money and clear the path. I can pay a deposit of 1 million first. Once you provide the design, I'll pay another million immediately. After you provide the budget, I'll pay 80% upfront when you start work. With this offer, the manager finally returned to his senses. He knew Yi Xingchen wasn't joking. He waved at the guards who were rushing in. It's fine, you can leave now. He then looked at Yi Xingchen skeptically. Sir, why do you want to build a doomsday fortress? Yi Xingchen didn't bother explaining and simply asked, can you take on this project or not? If not, just say so, and I'll find someone else. The manager quickly nodded. Yes, of course we can take it. Tell me your specific requirements. As a security company, they hadn't built a doomsday fortress before, but they had a general understanding from movies and decrypted materials. Moreover, they had some relevant information. Even if it was just a reinforced concrete building with thick steel and lead plates, it wouldn't be too difficult for them. Of course, a doomsday bunker wasn't that simple. It required systems to support life. If they could install those systems, they could earn a significant profit. This kind of naive customer wasn't easy to come by. The money would be easy to make. Yi Xingchen didn't waste time and presented his requirements. The concrete wall should be around 3 meters thick, with thicker steel plates in the middle. Lead plates aren't necessary. As Yi Xingchen detailed his rough requirements, the manager started off bewildered and gradually showed a shocked expression. Oh my God, he's serious. Finally, Yi Xingchen presented his ultimatum. I want to see your design tonight. Tomorrow, I want to see your excavators digging the foundation. If not, I'll find someone else. By now, the manager had regained his composure. He seriously doubted if Yi Xingchen was playing a prank on him. Staring at Yi Xingchen, his tone was skeptical. Based on your requirements, this project won't be cheap at all. It's estimated to be around 30 million. Do you have the money? Yi Xingchen didn't beat around the bush. If you sign the contract with me now, promising to complete the construction within 2 weeks, I'll give you 10 million right away. The manager's eyes immediately lit up. Deal. As long as the money's in place and work goes on nonstop for 24 hours, it must be finished. After signing the contract and Yi Xingchen had paid the 10 million, the manager finally felt at ease, completely dismissing the idea that Yi Xingchen was just playing around. However, a new thought emerged in the manager's mind. This young man before him most likely had some issues in his head. He cautiously asked, Sir, may I ask why you want to build such a doomsday bunker? Yi Xingchen thought for a moment before giving a reminder. The apocalypse will arrive in a month. If you believe me, stock up on supplies and find a safe shelter. The manager paused briefly and then laughed awkwardly. You really have a sense of humor. Meanwhile, he had concluded that Yi Xingchen must have some kind of mental problem. Otherwise, how could he utter such absurd words? Yi Xingchen noticed the manager's thoughts but didn't say anything more. He had done all he could. How long he could survive after the apocalypse arrived would depend on his luck. Leaving the construction company, Yi Xingchen received a message from Chen Rower. I was really testing you before. Why don't you understand my intentions? After thinking it over, I may have gone a bit too far. I've decided to be your girlfriend. Can we meet up? Such a good actress, pretending so well. Yi Xingchen sneered, deleted her from his contacts, and then drove towards Jinghai Pedestrian Street. The chain of supermarkets under him focused on fresh produce and daily goods, lacking clothing, shoes, and entertainment and fitness equipment. To thrive during the apocalypse, these things were essential. A sufficient stockpile was a must. On the other side, Chen Rower was waiting for Yi Xingchen's reply. After being humiliated by Yi Xingchen at Shangri-La Hotel at noon, she was initially extremely angry, hating him to death. However, as she calmed down, she started to reflect on her actions over the years. She realized that what she had done might not have been very clever. Anyone who invested so much time without getting any response would naturally harbor resentment. Her goal was to find a second-generation millionaire with at least 1 billion assets, achieving a complete social elevation. Yi Xingchen was clearly too far away from her goal, but she did need a cash machine to package herself, presenting herself as a high-end individual beyond the reach of ordinary people, which would give her a chance to interact with more successful individuals. So, she decided to continue stringing Yi Xingchen along. She believed that given Yi Xingchen's behavior as a lapdog over the past few years, as long as she agreed to be his girlfriend, he would surely turn into a lapdog once again. In her view, agreeing to be Yi Xingchen's girlfriend wasn't a big deal. At most, they would hold hands, hug, and maybe even kiss. As for her body, That was out of the question. However, an hour had passed since she sent the message, and there was still no reply from Yixingchen. She began to feel doubtful. Could he really have given up? But then she quickly dismissed that idea. In a way, absolutely impossible. That lapdog who's been groveling at my feet for so many years, how could he give up now? Humph, trying to play the game of cat and mouse with me? You're a bit too inexperienced. In this regard, this girl is a master. With a cold sneer, Chun Rower quickly composed a message. Yixingchen, why aren't you replying to my messages? I didn't mind being humiliated by you in front of all those people today. Why are you being so petty? If you're going to be like this, I'll have to reconsider whether I want to be your girlfriend or not. After editing, Chun Rower carefully read through the message. It maintained her dignity while also giving Yixingchen an opportunity to save face. She was quite satisfied with the wording. Humph, Yixingchen, no matter how you struggle in the end, you'll be under my control, won't you? With a cold chuckle, Chun Rower clicked the send button. The next moment, she froze in place, gradually revealing an angry expression, and let out a scream, Yixingchen, how dare you delete me? Having said that, she immediately dialed Yixingchen's phone number. At this moment, Yixingchen had already arrived at the pedestrian street, preparing to visit a large store specializing in high-end fitness equipment. During the apocalypse, it was crucial to maintain a strong physique to withstand various unknown dangers in his previous life. He was always on the brink of starvation and didn't have the luxury to consider working out, let alone conserving energy. But things were different now. With abundant resources, he had to keep his body in peak condition at all times. As he entered the store, his phone rang. He glanced at it. It was a call from Chun Rower. Persistent as ever. Yixingchen sneered, hung up the call directly, and then blocked her number. At this moment, a young woman in tight sportswear, her hair neatly tied in a ponytail, exuding youthful energy, walked over with a smile on her face. Sir, what would you like to buy? We have the most comprehensive collection of fitness equipment in the entire Jinghai city. Since Yixingchen had come here directly, he naturally knew this. He didn't waste words and said directly, the most high-end fitness equipment in every category. Bring me 10 sets of each. The young girl was momentarily stunned, almost not believing her ears. She asked in disbelief, Sir, did you just say that? Yixingchen felt somewhat helpless. He slowed down his speech and said seriously, the most high-end fitness equipment in every category. Bring me 10 sets of each. Generate the invoice immediately. I'll make the payment right away. The reason he was buying 10 sets was that he wasn't certain how long the Ice Age would last. It might even be a lifetime. He needed to ensure that if one piece of equipment malfunctioned, he'd have a backup since he wasn't capable of repairing them himself. Once she confirmed, the stunned expression on the young girl's face gradually disappeared, replaced by shock. Her face turned red due to excitement. Great. You? Just wait. I'll generate the invoice for you. The young woman was so excited she was nearly incoherent. A wealthy customer like this, who didn't even bother to haggle over the price, was truly rare. Selling so many pieces of fitness equipment would earn her a substantial commission. While she couldn't calculate the exact amount, it was at least equivalent to her year's salary. Manager Wang. Manager Wang. Huge order. Huge order. The young woman exclaimed, instantly causing a commotion in the entire store. Everyone looked over with puzzled expressions. Manager Wang's face darkened as he scolded, Why are you making such a fuss? What kind of order could make you so excited? The young woman joyfully said, All the most high-end fitness equipment on site, 10 sets of each. Then Manager Wang also froze for a moment, then couldn't help but exclaim, Are you not joking? What they sold here were high-end fitness equipment. The most expensive Taino Health treadmill cost over 240,000 yuan. This wasn't the kind of equipment that only cost a few thousand yuan. If all the equipment was being purchased in tins, wouldn't that be 6 to 7 million yuan at least? This could certainly be considered a massive order. Hearing their conversation, everyone in the store showed expressions of shock. Oh my, isn't this a bit too extravagant? Buying so much high-end fitness equipment just to exercise? I bet he's opening a high-end gym. Who else would buy such high-end fitness equipment for personal use? That makes sense. Not just the store clerks and customers, Even manager Wang had the same thought. He hurriedly approached, wearing a flattering smile, and said, "Sir, I've already generated the invoice for you. May I ask which fitness center it should be delivered to?" Yi Xingchen responded calmly, "Deliver it to my home." Manager Wang hesitated for a moment, then asked in doubt, "Are you sure you want it delivered to your home?" "Yes." Yi Xingchen's eyebrows slightly furrowed, and he inquired, "Is there a problem?" "Oh, no, no problem. We'll process the payment on this side." Soon, Yi Xingchen paid the 7,800,000 yuan without any hint of hesitation. He believed in the principle of you get what you pay for. Furthermore, with the complete collapse of the global economic system during the apocalypse, money became useless. Its non-combustible nature was worth less than a piece of waste paper, so, when spending money, he didn't feel the slightest pang of regret. He even had a plan in mind. He would sell his chain of supermarkets sooner rather than later. If he couldn't sell them, he would use them as collateral to obtain more resources. After leaving the delivery address, Yi Xingchen visited a store that sold computers and other gaming devices. Electronic devices were prone to breaking, and since he couldn't repair them, he bought 100 sets of every entertainment device he could see. Then, he went to a clothing store and bought out all the winter clothes in his size that had been stockpiled in the warehouse. As Yi Xingchen continued his shopping spree, the entire pedestrian street shop owners were abuzz. They all learned about the extravagant customer who never bargained and placed massive orders. All of them hoped that Yi Xingchen would grace their stores with his presence. On the other side, Chen Rower, who had completely lost contact with Yi Xingchen, was going berserk, smashing everything she could find in her home. "Bastard! Damn puppy! How dare he become so arrogant? Why should he treat me like this? Having such a beautiful girlfriend as me is his good fortune earned over 8 lifetimes. Deleting me as a friend and blocking my calls. Who does he think he is?" After a bout of wild venting, Chen Rower gradually regained her composure and began to think about how to handle the situation. Yi Xingchen was right. She was also dating another wealthy second generation at the same time. However, that wealthy second generation had cursed her after spending tens of thousands on her without getting what he wanted and then cut off contact. Without a job and with high daily expenses to maintain her image as a wealthy beauty, how could she survive without a cash cow? "No, I can't let go of Yi Xingchen. I have to firmly control him, even if I have to be a bit more proactive." Chen Rower's eyes shimmered with greed as she continued to mutter to herself, "As long as I go to his house and actively approach him, offer myself willingly, and maybe even give him a kiss, wouldn't he obediently obey me?" She was extremely confident in her looks and figure, and most importantly, she still saw Yi Xingchen as the same old puppy from before. Today's events were just a minor setback. As long as she played the part of a vulnerable and regretful girl, shed a few remorseful tears, couldn't Yi Xingchen be tamed back into submission? After succeeding this time, I must quickly drain his wealth, then thoroughly humiliate him, and then find a new wealthy second generation. With this in mind, Chen Rower calmed down, carefully applying light makeup that she knew Yi Xingchen liked. She then changed into an outfit that looked extremely innocent, got into the Panamera that Yi Xingchen had given her, and drove towards Yi Xingchen's villa. When she arrived at the villa, she was stunned by the scene before her. Several trucks were parked at the entrance, and many loaders were busy moving things into the villa while Yi Xingchen stood at the entrance, giving instructions. What is he doing? Chen Rower looked puzzled, but she didn't mind. After getting out of the car, she walked towards Yi Xingchen. The originally angry and resentful expression on her face had turned into one of distress and regret in the short journey. Yi Xingchen noticed her expression, seemed to pause for a moment, then a barely detectable trace of mockery curled up at the corner of his mouth. If it weren't for Chen Rower luring him to open the door in the apocalypse, which attracted a group of ruthless demons, if it weren't for him witnessing Chen Rower kneeling in front of that robust man, eagerly opening her mouth, too, please him, if it weren't for him seeing Chen Rower suggest eating him after food ran out, he might have believed her. Calculating schemer. Quite the actress. At this moment, Chen Rower had approached him, wearing a pitiful expression. "I'm sorry, Yi Xingchen. I was wrong before. I shouldn't have tested you for so long. Today, I realize that I truly love you. I can't be without you." As she spoke, Chunroer had come within a meter of Yi Xingqian. Her eyes were brimming with tears. Yi Xingqian, I want to be with you. No one can separate us. Please give me a chance, okay? With this, tears welled up in Chunroer's eyes, flowing down her cheeks. She perfectly portrayed the image of a pure and devoted girl in love. Observing this scene, Yi Xingqian couldn't help but applaud. Remarkable, your acting skills are truly impressive. It's a shame you're not in Hollywood. No wonder in the apocalypse, so many strong people died, yet you, a delicate woman, managed to survive for so long. Admire, admire. Chunroer was momentarily perplexed. Although she didn't understand the concept of an apocalypse, she could tell that Yi Xingqian's words were not complimentary. A flicker of confusion and resentment flashed through her eyes, followed by her controlling herself and pretending to sob softly. Yi Xingqian, I'm sorry. Please don't be angry with me anymore. My heart is truly in pain. As she spoke, Chunroer flung herself into Yi Xingqian's arms, holding him tightly. This scene was unexpected for Yi Xingqian, leaving him momentarily stunned. Taking advantage of this, Chunroer moved in for a kiss, only to be met with a sudden slap across the face as Yi Xingqian reacted in time. Smack, a crisp sound, and Chunroer froze, while Yi Xingqian, on the other hand, couldn't hold back the urge to turn away and vomit against the wall. His face was pale, and the disgust in his eyes was so intense, as if he had stepped in something foul. Ugh! In the apocalypse, Chunroer's actions, like a submissive dog groveling in front of a group of people, replayed incessantly in his mind. If it weren't for the fact that the apocalypse hadn't truly arrived yet, and the world still had laws and order, he would have killed Chunroer on the spot. And after a brief moment of shock, Chunroer's whole demeanor turned aggressive. What do you mean by vomiting? Do you think I'm not good enough for you? Who do you think you are? How dare you slap me? I will sue you and send you to jail. Chunroer's expression turned sinister as she continued to scream, her ear-piercing voice causing Yi Xingqian's brow to furrow. He wiped his mouth with a tissue, then looked at Chunroer with a disgusted expression, coldly saying, I vomited because you touched my body, and it made me nauseous. At this point, Yi Xingqian paused for a moment, his tone rising slightly, and his voice full of disdain as he continued, Sue me? I should sue you for molesting. Get ready for a court summons. Chunroer was stunned. She disregarded the fiery pain on her face, her eyes widened and stared at Yi Xingqian, filled with an expression of disbelief. She had willingly offered herself and was rejected, but to make matters worse, she had been slapped. That was bad enough. But he was even accusing her of molesting him? Wasn't he the one who used to eagerly anticipate and daydream about such things happening? What was happening now? Chunroer felt an unreal sensation, as if she were dreaming at that moment. Yi Xingqian's cold voice brought her back to reality. Don't stand here blocking the way. Move aside. Chunroer snapped back to her senses and exclaimed, Yi Xingqian, just you wait. We're not finished. Leaving behind a harsh remark, Chunroer covered her face and left, while Yi Xingqian faintly smiled, not bothered in the slightest. Chunroer was just a gold-digging woman with an average background. Over the past few years, he had been supporting her without even having a job. What influence could she possibly have? Threatening him was simply a joke. Soon, the workers finished unloading the goods and left. By now, the villa's yard was filled with various supplies. After confirming no one was around, Yi Xingqian stored everything in the dimensional space. Instantly, the villa's yard became empty. Though the dimensional space had been filled with so many supplies, it still appeared empty. The dimensional space had an area of 300 hectares and a height of 100 meters. It was truly enormous. Any useful supplies I can think of need to be put into the dimensional space, and I have to fill it up. He muttered to himself in a low voice, then returned to the villa and lay down on the sofa, planning tomorrow's actions. Relying solely on the resources from his own supermarket's logistics center, he would definitely live comfortably during the apocalypse, free from worrying about food. But most of what he could directly consume from there were snacks and fruits, and anyone would grow tired of them after a while. The supermarket did have a fair amount of fresh produce, but he hardly knew how to cook and couldn't make any delicious dishes. Therefore, Yi Xingchen decided that tomorrow he would go to the major hotels to order banquet meals, packing them all into the dimensional space. Because time was frozen in the dimensional space, there was no issue of food going bad. Everything taken out would be fresh at any time. Yi Xingchen wanted to ensure that when the apocalypse arrived and others were struggling for a mouthful of food, he could still enjoy the most delicious banquets. With these plans in mind, Yi Xingchen received the design blueprint from Long Shield Security Company, and after reviewing it, he was satisfied. Having arranged to conduct an on-site survey tomorrow, Yi Xingchen returned to his bedroom and fell into a deep sleep. Since the apocalypse in his previous life, it had been a while since he had slept so soundly. He didn't wake up until a little past 9 the next morning. After freshening up and having a light breakfast at home, Yi Xingchen got in his car and drove towards Chuanshuqing, the most authentic and highly praised Sichuan restaurant in Jinghai City. On the other side, Chenroer's best friend, Chu Yao, had just returned from a vacation in Thailand and brought local specialties to visit her. She knocked on the door for a while before Chenroer finally opened it. Chu Yao complained, "What's wrong with you? You never turn off your phone, and you don't reply to messages." "Sure. Here's the translation." Speaking of this, Chu Yao only noticed that Chenroer's half-face was swollen, her eyes were red as if she had cried, and her expression was extremely haggard. Chu Yao put down the local specialty in her hand with a slap, quickly took Chenroer's hand, her eyes full of concern and anger. "Rower, what's happened to you? Did someone hit you? Tell me, I'll scold him for you." Upon hearing her words, Chenroer completely let her guard down. Hugging Chu Yao and bursting into tears, her cries were heart-wrenching. After returning home yesterday, the more she thought about it, the angrier and more aggrieved she felt, almost not sleeping all night. Now seeing her best friend, she couldn't hold back anymore. "Rower, don't cry. Tell me what happened." Chu Yao supported Chenroer into the room. A moment later, having learned the ins and outs of the situation, Chu Yao said with anger, "To actually hit a woman, he's really not a man. He deserves to be single forever. That dog?" Chenroer sniffled softly, her face full of unwillingness. "Yao Yao, what should I do? Without that lapdog, how can I go on living?" She was getting anxious. Finding a wealthy second generation like Yi Xingchen who would shower her with money was simply impossible in a short period of time. She didn't want to lower herself to look for those greasy middle-aged men in their 40s or 50s, feeling disgusted by the thought. Besides, men at this age always wanted to take advantage. How could they lavish money on her like Yi Xingchen used to? She had grown accustomed to a life of luxury, and now without Yi Xingchen as her cash machine, her living standards would plummet immediately. That was something she absolutely couldn't accept. As beautiful as I am, I should be up high, enjoying those exquisite things. How could I be the same as ordinary people? She didn't care about Yi Xingchen's slap anymore. She just wanted to continue living her old life. Chu Yao sighed and said, I've told you before, leading someone on like that is like playing with monkeys. You have to give them benefits from time to time. You didn't let him take advantage of anything before, and now, see, problems have arisen just as I predicted." Chenroer thought for a moment. Chu Yao had indeed said something like this before. It felt like a lifeline, and she quickly asked, "So, what should I do now?" "What should you do?" "Apologize." "But I already apologized yesterday, and not only did he not accept it, he hit me." "You chose the wrong time to go. You went when he was most angry. Isn't that asking for trouble?" "What do you mean, then?" "He yelled and hit you yesterday. He should have vented most of his anger. Going today will definitely yield different results." Chenroer thought for a moment and found it reasonable. She held Chu Yao's arm and pleaded, "Can you accompany me there?" Chu Yao sighed helplessly. "Fine, I'm really fed up with you." Chenroer was still somewhat worried. "Do you think he'll forgive me this time?" A hint of sarcasm appeared at the corner of Chu Yao's mouth. After being a lapdog for several years, it shows that Yi Xingchen is a fool for love. Such idiots are easy to deceive. Once his anger subsides, won't he obediently continue being your lapdog? Meanwhile, Yi Xingchen had already arrived at the Chuan Shuqing restaurant. The waiter warmly greeted him. "Hello, sir. How many people?" Yi Xingchen shook his head. "I'm not here to eat. I'm here to book a banquet. What are the prices?" The waiter smiled. "The lowest is 888 yuan. Then there's 1288, 1688. Yi Xingchen interrupted directly. What's the highest price? The highest is 2,888 yuan. In addition to classic Sichuan dishes, there are also modern Sichuan-style dishes made with the best ingredients. Let me show you the menu. The waiter handed over the menu. After a moment of perusing, Xingchen nodded. All right, then I'll take the 2,888 yuan option. I want 1,000 tables. Hearing the number of 1,000 tables, the waiter was taken aback. 1,000 tables equated to a whopping 2.88 million yuan. Who would go mad and book so many banquet tables? Moreover, considering their standard of 2,888 yuan per table, which was enough for 10 adults, 1,000 tables implied hosting 10,000 people. Who could have that many relatives and friends? Furthermore, with so many tables, where would they even fit? The waiter thought she had misheard and asked again, Sir, how many tables do you want to book? Having experienced a similar situation at the Shangri-La Hotel before, Yi Xingchen was serious. He enunciated clearly, 1,000 tables, I can pay up front. He added, I'm not joking. Now the waiter was completely dumbfounded. She stared at Yi Xingchen for a full 5 seconds before regaining her composure and exclaimed, Sir, did you say you want to book 1,000 tables of the 2,888 standard banquet? For a moment, all the customers and waitstaff at Chuanxiang Qing restaurant turned their gaze towards Yi Xingchen, their eyes filled with shock. 1,000 banquet tables. The number was simply unbelievable. Why Yi Xingchen, on the other hand, wore an expression of resignation and had to repeat, That's right, 1,000 tables. He had chosen this number after careful consideration rather than randomly. He had looked at the banquet menus, and a single table could feed him for about a week. With 1,000 tables, it would be enough for 1,000 weeks. Calculating for a year with 52 weeks, it would barely last him 19 years. And considering that he would likely live for around 60 years if nothing unexpected happened, these 1,000 Sichuan-style banquet tables wouldn't suffice. Moreover, this calculation didn't even take into account the possibility of having a future hostess in his shelter, or even having children and grandchildren. After all, nobody knew how long the Ice Age would last, and he hadn't lost interest in all women just because of someone like Chen Roer. With an increasing population in the shelter, these 1,000 banquet tables might seem like a lot, but they wouldn't last for long. While there were many snacks and fruits in the supermarket, they couldn't compare to the gourmet dishes prepared by chefs. His well-thought-out decision seemed crazy in the eyes of the waiter and others. The waiter remained stunned for quite a while before finally accepting the reality. She hurriedly said, I'm sorry, sir. The number of banquet tables you're ordering is just too astonishing. I can't make that decision. Please wait a moment. I'll call the owner over. Next, the owner himself came out. After a round of questioning and confirming that Yi Xingchen wasn't joking, he was still in disbelief until Yi Xingchen paid the full amount. Then he became ecstatic. Calculating based on a restaurant industry gross margin of 60%. Just from this order, the owner could earn 1.72 million yuan. After instructing to have the prepared banquet packages delivered to his villa, Yi Xingchen didn't linger. He arrived at a Cantonese restaurant and booked 1,000 tables there too. Although Sichuan cuisine was delicious, it couldn't be eaten every day. After a while, anyone would get tired of it. Next came Shandong cuisine, Hunan cuisine. Yi Xingchen booked banquet tables for all 8 major Chinese culinary styles. Soon, the news of a wealthy customer crazily booking banquet tables spread in the catering industry of Jinghai City. Everyone speculated about why he would order so many. Then, Yi Xingchen arrived at a winery. Having food alone wasn't enough, drinks were also necessary. Their chain of supermarkets did have quite a few drinks, but they were all lower-end products meant for the general public. Both in terms of quality and taste, they were far inferior. After all, if the 50 million yuan wasn't spent now, it would become worthless paper when the doomsday arrived. It was better to spend it now. He spent a whopping 5 million yuan on alcohol, and then, satisfied, he returned to his villa. Soon, a large truck loaded with crates of alcohol arrived. Yi Xingchen instructed the workers to unload the alcohol. Not long after, the person he found repulsive, Chen Roer, appeared once again, but this time, she was accompanied by Chu Yao. Chu Yao saw Yi Xingchen and immediately launched into a barrage of accusations. You, A grown man. How could you hit a woman? Women are meant to be cared for, not beaten. She grabbed Chinroer's still swollen cheek and angrily said, "Look at what you've turned her into. Do you realize that what you did is illegal?" On the way here, she had already discussed the strategy with Chinroer. Their plan was to make Yi Xingqian feel a sense of disadvantage for what he had done yesterday, so that he would be on the defensive psychologically. At the same time, Chinroer was to put on a pitiable appearance, with teardrops already circling in her eyes. However, Yi Xingqian was not buying into it. He said coldly, "I did hit her. If you have a problem, go report me." You? Suddenly, Chu Yao was at a loss for words. She never expected Yi Xingqian to say such things, which were completely different from what she had imagined. Why Yi Xingqian had no favorable opinion of Chu Yao either. They were alike in character, which was how they became close friends. He said impatiently, "I don't want to see you too. My home is not open to you. Disappear from my sight." Chun Roer, who had prepared herself for this confrontation, looked at the crates and crates of expensive alcohol being unloaded, occupying the entire yard. She then remembered the trucks full of supplies brought here yesterday. Confusion crept into her mind. "Yi Xingqian, didn't you buy a lot of stuff and put it in the yard yesterday? Why is everything gone today?" She asked this question not just out of curiosity, but also to strike up a conversation with Yi Xingqian. However, Yi Xingqian treated her as if she were air, not bothering to respond. He instructed the workers to continue their work. Chu Yao had no interest in this topic, but she thought it could be a way to break the deadlock. So, she pretended to be curious and asked, "Yi Xingqian, I remember you didn't used to drink much. Why are you stocking up so much now?" Seeing the two incessantly chattering in his ears, Yi Xingqian's expression darkened. He was about to shoo them away, but then a flash of inspiration struck him, and he changed his mind. With a serious face, he said, "The apocalypse is coming in a month. Humanity will face an unprecedented survival crisis. I'm currently stockpiling various supplies to ensure a better future." It wasn't that he suddenly became compassionate. He just wanted to intentionally let Chinroer know that he had amassed a substantial amount of supplies. He wanted both Chinroer, who had broken into his house and seized his supplies before, and even those who had eaten his food to know. When the doomsday arrived, Chinroer would come to his doorstep like a dog, begging for help. Those people he loathed to his core would also come begging to him, providing him with an opportunity for revenge. He believed that even though he said this, neither Chinroer nor Chu Yao would believe him, and his expectation was accurate. Both of them were momentarily stunned, and then their faces showed expressions of disbelief as if they were looking at a fool. Chinroer was stunned for a moment, and with a fake smile that didn't reach her eyes, she said, "Yi Xingqian, you really know how to joke?" Having achieved his goal, Yi Xingqian casually responded, "Believe it or not, it's up to you." Chu Yao also thought that Yi Xingqian was joking. She saw this as an opportunity to liven up the atmosphere and jokingly said, "Could it be that a comet will strike the Earth and cause a massive extinction event? Or perhaps the greenhouse effect suddenly intensifies, causing a 2-degree rise in global temperatures, melting the ice caps and flooding the Earth?" Yi Xingqian shook his head slightly and said, "None of those. A month from now, the sun's activity will suddenly weaken and sunlight will become extremely faint. Global temperatures will plummet and we'll enter an ice age." Seeing Yi Xingqian's serious expression, Chu Yao and Chinroer exchanged a glance, both showing a hint of disdain. World-ending apocalypse? It was simply a joke. They even began to doubt if Yi Xingqian had lost his mind to be able to spout such nonsense. Humanity's research and monitoring of the sun had never ceased. If there were any abnormalities in solar activity, wouldn't the scientists be aware of it? Moreover, who could possibly know what would happen a month from now? Could someone really predict the future? Yi Xingqian could clearly see the expressions on their faces, and a trace of undisguised mockery appeared at the corners of his mouth. When the doomsday arrived, they would know who the real fool was. They would experience the regret of not being able to turn back time and the feeling of despair. And he, Yi Xingqian, would become the only one who could save them. By that time, they would be like dogs, begging for mercy before him. At that moment, several cars arrived, bearing the logo of the Long Shield Security Company on their doors, catching the attention of the two women and arousing their curiosity. Yi Xingchen nodded in satisfaction. With the money in place, efficiency was guaranteed. The security manager got out of the car, walking over with a warm smile. When he saw Chen Rower and Chu Yao, his gaze lingered for a moment, a fleeting trace of amazement in his eyes. Mr. Yi Xingchen, hello? The security manager warmly shook Yi Xingchen's hand and said with a smile, I've brought the survey personnel. After a scientific assessment of the main structure of the villa and the geological structure of the entire yard, we can start the work tomorrow. Yi Xingchen calmly responded, All right, let's begin. The security manager glanced at the survey personnel behind him and urged, What are you waiting for? Start working. At this moment, Chen Rower curiously asked, Yi Xingchen, what are you planning to do? Yi Xingchen's large villa occupied a vast area, and the elegantly designed garden courtyard made it hard for her to see any areas needing renovation. Even Chu Yao wore a puzzled expression. Yi Xingchen didn't pay them any attention, but the security manager looked at Chen Rower and Chu Yao, smiling as he said, Don't you know? Mr. Qin is planning to build an apocalypse shelter that can withstand nuclear explosions. What? Both Chen Rower and Chu Yao widened their eyes in astonishment, looking at Yi Xingchen with expressions of disbelief. At this moment, they believed that Yi Xingchen must have lost his mind. Who would be crazy enough to build an apocalypse shelter? Chen Rower asked with doubt. Yi Xingchen, is this for real? Yi Xingchen didn't hide anything and nodded. That's right. He intended to let Chen Rower know that he possessed a vast amount of resources and the safest apocalypse shelter. When the doomsday arrived, everything would proceed according to his plan. Hearing his answer, Chu Yao pulled Chen Rower aside and whispered, In my opinion, Yi Xingchen must have suffered some significant shock. You should give him some time to calm down before attempting to repair your relationship. With a helpless nod, Chen Rower walked up to Yi Xingchen and said, Yi Xingchen, we'll leave for now. I've given you a chance, so I hope you'll treasure it. Yi Xingchen's lips curled into a disdainful smile. No need. Frustration colored Chen Rower's face, but she could only leave with Chu Yao. After they left, Yi Xingchen approached the security manager and said in a low voice, I need some firearms. Help me acquire them. The security manager hesitated for a moment, then shook his head. Firearms are illegal. How could we possibly get them? Undeterred, Yi Xingchen added, Price isn't an issue. Don't worry, I'll keep it confidential. In the face of the apocalyptic world, where humanity's morals had crumbled and killing and looting were rampant, having resources alone wouldn't be enough. They also needed the means to protect those resources. Conventional weapons were relatively easy to obtain, but what could compare to firearms? Yi Xingchen had seen in his previous life how a thug armed with firearms could dominate a region, seizing resources effortlessly. For safety's sake, he wanted to acquire firearms too. And a security company like this one undoubtedly had the means, as long as he was willing to pay the price. He believed he could get what he wanted. True to his expectations, the security manager's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. He looked at Yi Xingchen for a moment before shaking his head. Sorry, the risk is too great. Seeing that he didn't outright say it was impossible, Yi Xingchen knew there was hope. He reassured in a low voice, Don't worry, I'm flexible with the price. Trust me, I'll keep everything confidential. After all, I'm just curious about firearms. I won't engage in any illegal activities. Besides, I'm still young. With this response, the security manager looked around, seeing that no one was paying attention to them, and then whispered, I'll check with my contacts. If there's any news, I'll let you know. Good. I'll wait for your good news. Yi Xingchen nodded and then thought of something else. Also, get me some powerful crossbows and the like. The security manager gave him a skeptical look and asked, What exactly are you planning? With a calm expression, Yi Xingchen answered, Just playing around. I'm quite the enthusiast when it comes to weapons. The security manager silently observed Yi Xingchen for a few seconds before nodding. All right. In the elite circles of the wealthy, it wasn't unheard of for them to engage in such activities. They usually went to highly private hunting grounds for this kind of entertainment. So, the security manager wasn't all that surprised. Before long, the security manager left with the survey personnel to arrange the work. Meanwhile, Yi Xingchen took out the documentation of his other valuable properties and shops in Jinghai City, as well as the relevant information about the entire chain of supermarkets. Then, he drove to the bank to as doomsday approaches. These shops and properties will become devoid of any value, and businesses will be unable to create any value whatsoever. Therefore, he wants to mortgage all of these assets now, take out loans from the bank, and continue wildly purchasing other resources. Due to the time within his dimensional space being still, no matter how many resources he stores, they will not expire and will play an unimaginable role in the future. Imagine, after a year or more, most of the resources in the world are depleted, and some have expired and become inedible. Yet, he possesses inexhaustible resources. In that case, what kind of transcendent status will he attain? Because his properties were in prime locations and the supermarket chain was doing very well, the loan approval was very fast. On the same day, the bank gave him 1 billion yuan. After receiving the money, Yi Xingchen immediately called the CEO of his company, informed the suppliers of daily necessities, food, and wine. No matter how many goods they have in their warehouses, send them all to the company's production logistics center. The company's president was stunned for a long time and asked uncertainly, "Boss, are you kidding?" Yi Xingchen said solemnly, "I'm not joking." However, the stock in the warehouse is enough for the daily consumption of the supermarket. If we replenish so many at once. Before he could finish, Yi Xingchen interrupted him and said in an extremely strict tone, "Carry out my decision." The CEO was silent for a moment before asking, "Why?" Yi Xingchen didn't want to waste time talking nonsense with him on the phone, so he said directly, "You don't need to know why, just follow the order." At this point, Yi Xingchen remembered that this CEO had followed his father from a small supermarket until now. He could be considered a meritorious minister, so he reminded him, "I suggest you stock up on more supplies." After saying that, she hung up the phone without caring if he would listen or not. By the time he got home, it was already dark. After dinner, Yi Xingchen lay in bed and continued to plan his next move. It was inevitable that people would fall sick. After the apocalypse, medicine would be extremely precious. Therefore, he had to obtain a large number of medicines. In addition, after the apocalypse, all the mountains and rivers froze, and the water power station completely stopped operating. Due to the lack of sufficient coal supply in the extremely cold environment, the thermal power station would soon stop operating. The only thing that could survive for a long time was the nuclear power plant. However, it was impossible for nuclear power plants to supply enough energy to the whole country. Therefore, after the apocalypse, electricity resources would become extremely precious. The only way to solve this problem was to buy a large number of generators and store a large amount of gasoline and diesel. If there was a chance, coal would also be stored. This was what Yi Xingchen was going to do next. With a plan in mind, Yi Xingchen went asleep. The next day, at around 9 o'clock, he was woken up by his phone ringing. It was an unknown number. "Hello, is this Mr. Yi Xingchen?" "Yes, it's me." "You are?" "I'm from Chuan Shu Qing Restaurant. The 1,000 tables you ordered have all been packed. Can you send them over now?" "Send it off." Yi Xingchen was a little surprised. In just a little over a day, Chuan Shu Qing Restaurant had already prepared 1,000 tables of banquets. Money was indeed awesome. Soon, a large truck drove over. It was filled with all kinds of packed dishes. A few young men from the restaurant were busy moving into the villa. Yi Xingchen stood at the door and gave instructions. For 2 days in a row, many trucks had been heading to the villa, attracting the attention of the other residents in the villa area. Yi Xingchen's neighbor, Lu Qilong, came to his side with a big belly and a husky. He asked curiously, "Little Yi, what are you doing? These are all dishes?" Yi Xingchen looked at the muscular middle-aged man and sneered in his heart. He clearly remembered that after the apocalypse, Lu Qilong's family ran out of supplies. He first ate the husky and tried to break into his house to snatch supplies, but he failed. In order to survive, Lu Qilong had gone completely crazy. Because Yi Xingchen refused to open the door, he cursed and even tried to burn down the entire villa. Unfortunately, because the temperature was too low and the fuel was too little, he did not succeed in the end. He returned home and ate his nearly 70-year-old mother, then his wife, and finally his son. Yi Xingchen naturally wouldn't have a good expression towards such a person. He said in a cold tone, "I'm just stockpiling more takeout so that I don't have to go out to eat." TSK, youngsters nowadays are really Lu Qilong looked at Yi Xingchen with disdain and left with the husky. After all of Chuan Shuqing's banquets were moved into the villa, Yi Xingchen put them into the dimensional space and drove to a pharmaceutical chain company. After seeing the company manager, Yi Xingchen went straight to the point. I'll take care of all the medicine in your company's warehouse. Just like the previous situation, he was stunned for a moment and his face was full of doubt. Sir, are you joking? Yi Xingchen was too lazy to explain so much to him. He made up an excuse and said, I'm going to donate a batch of medicine to the poor areas on the plateau, understand? I see. You're really a good person, the manager said in realization. Then, he revealed a surprised expression. It was a huge order to directly clear the warehouse. It was enough to make his performance explode and earn a lot of commission. Yi Xingchen asked him to send the medicine to the villa. After paying, he drove away and went straight to the logistics storage center. The sky was already dark, and the employees had already gotten off work. He went to the warehouse alone and opened the door. When he saw the mountain of supplies, a smile appeared on his face. Not bad, but not enough. Then, Yi Xingchen put all the supplies into the dimensional space and called the company's president to continue asking for goods from the major suppliers. At the same time, he told him that the warehouse had been emptied and donated so that he wouldn't be surprised. He knew that this excuse was very lame and would arouse many people's suspicions, but he could not care less now. After all, time was of the essence. Early the next morning, the security manager brought the construction team to the villa and began construction. After arranging the work, the security manager called Yi Xingchen to his Ford Raptor and opened the cargo box. There were 4 neat black boxes inside. The security manager looked left and right, then lowered his voice and said, there are 4 sets of military bows and crossbows inside. They are so powerful that they can be used by servants. There are 1,000 arrows, enough for you to play with for a long time. How much? Yi Xingchen nodded in satisfaction. 1 million. All right, tell me your card number. I'll transfer the money to you now. Seeing that Yi Xingchen was so straightforward, the security manager's face revealed a happy smile. He had made a 50-50 profit from this transaction. After the money was transferred, the security manager whispered, by the way, we have some progress on the firearms you want. What do you want? Hearing this, Yi Xingchen was overjoyed and said, what kind of firearms do you have? I want as much as you have. The security manager was shocked by his words and quickly lowered his voice. Do you think this is the beauty nation? We only have AK-47s and pistols now, and we can only get you one of each. Hearing this, Yi Xingchen could not help but feel disappointed. In fact, he still wanted the Barrett and grenades. However, these 2 things were enough for him to protect himself, so he nodded. All right, get one each. You have to get me more bullets. The more the better. After finalizing the firearm matters, the security manager left. The construction team began demolishing the villa's surrounding walls, and an excavator followed closely, digging deep pits. Since it was a standalone villa that didn't affect other homeowners' houses, Yi Xingchen's renovation plans weren't hindered by the property management. However, it piqued the curiosity of many neighbors. Yi Xingchen casually came up with a reason to brush them off, without explaining anything to them. The terrifying experiences during the doomsday had made his heart incredibly cold, making it difficult for him to feel any compassion for unrelated people. Even if he were to say that the apocalypse was approaching, who would believe him? The inevitable outcome would surely label him as a madman, with overt or covert mockery. It was better to say nothing at all. Moreover, the residents of this upscale villa area were all very wealthy. Yi Xingchen also didn't want them to know and start frantically hoarding supplies. In that case, wouldn't it hinder his own resource accumulation? Construction work inevitably produced some noise. To prevent complaints from neighbors and obstruction to the construction, Yi Xingchen spared no expense and had the security company install noise reduction facilities. Sound barriers were set up around the construction site with good soundproofing effects, reducing the noise by about 30 decibels. Building. Upon this, soundproof protective films were installed, and noise-isolating panels were used to contain the noise source. Additionally, since the area consisted of standalone villas separated by small courtyards, the distance between each villa was already significant. Hence, the resulting noise was almost negligible, but even so, The neighbor Lu Qilong still came knocking. "Stop, all of you. Stop. Who allowed you to carry out construction here?" Yi Xingchen walked up and asked, "What's the matter? What's the matter? You've disturbed my mother's rest. The construction must stop." The standalone villas in this area were all identical and were already very upscale. Lu Qilong thought that Yi Xingchen was going to transform the villa into an even more luxurious one. This made him feel inferior as a neighbor, prompting him to obstruct the construction. Hearing his words, a hint of mockery curved at the corner of Yi Xingchen's mouth. "Still daring to mention your mother? In a short while, this beast, will probably devour your entire family." With the advent of the apocalypse, under the dire circumstances of hunger and cold, human morality had deteriorated, and cannibalism was not uncommon. But consuming one's own kin was exceedingly rare. Even a tiger wouldn't eat its own cubs, indicating what kind of creature Lu Qilong was. Why Yi Xingchen spoke lightly. "Apologies, we've already implemented thorough noise reduction measures that fully comply with construction standards. If you don't believe it, you can use professional instruments for measurement." Lu Qilong knew that this excuse wouldn't hold up, and he angrily exclaimed, "Do you know this is illegal construction? I'll sue you." Yi Xingchen coldly smiled. "We have all the necessary permits. If you don't believe it, you can call the police immediately." Unlike high-rise buildings, construction in standalone villas wouldn't affect other floors' residents, so there weren't many restrictions. Moreover, he had paid the security company a substantial sum, ensuring that all the paperwork was in order, capable of withstanding any official investigation. Seeing Yi Xingchen's composed demeanor, Lu Qilong was taken aback for a moment and left fuming. It was just a minor incident. Not long after, vehicles from a pharmaceutical company arrived, unloading medicines into the villa. Then, banquet orders from several restaurants arrived and were discreetly stored by Yi Xingchen in his extra-dimensional space. Subsequently, Yi Xingchen didn't need to stay there any longer. He drove to the electromechanical market and purchased 100 generators. With the excessive deliveries to the villa over the past few days drawing too much attention from the villa's residents, he decided to have the market owner deliver the generators to his former company's warehouse. This location was remote, nearly devoid of people, and lacked supervision. A very discreet place, allowing him to store supplies in his extra-dimensional space without arousing suspicion. Once the generators were stored in his extra-dimensional space, Yi Xingchen faced a dilemma. He had the generators now, but he lacked fuel. Without fuel, a generator was no different from scrap metal. However, the country had strict controls on fuel, requiring identity registration even for filling a fuel can at a gas station, and stating the purpose of the purchase. While it was certain that he could obtain a significant amount of fuel through gas stations and refineries, Yi Xingchen had no connections in that area. This presented a headache. Even with connections, it would be difficult to obtain a sufficient amount of fuel without raising official suspicion. After pondering for a while, Yi Xingchen had an idea. "I can only clear out the oil reserves from a refinery when the apocalypse arrives." There was a large refinery in the outskirts of Jinghai City, supplying the entire southwestern region's fuel needs. Given the electricity requirements of his villa, the refinery's oil reserves could last him for thousands of years. If he managed to infiltrate the refinery, he could transfer all the fuel to his extra-dimensional space without anyone noticing due to the instantaneous nature of his space retrieval. It was a perfect plan, but the timing wasn't right now. After all, the sudden disappearance of an oil reserve would undoubtedly attract official attention, potentially causing trouble. The 2 to 3 days before the apocalypse were the most suitable. By that time, if there were no clues, no one would pay attention to this matter when doomsday arrived. A week later, a 10-meter-high, 3-meter-thick wall, reinforced with 5 layers of 30-centimeter-thick steel plates, had been built. Now, the construction of the equally thick circular dome was underway, designed to prevent anyone from staying atop the fortress. Simultaneously, a large quantity of insulation materials had been transported, commencing the insulation of the villa's external walls. 10 days later, the fortress was completely built, and the installation of a 1-meter-thick, 4-layer titanium alloy gate, along with air filtration systems and related security equipment, began. Soon, it was May 25, 2023, just one day left until the world's end. The concrete structure of the fortress had been specially treated and had fully solidified, meeting the required hardness standards. Even extreme cold weather couldn't affect it. The construction of the fortress was now complete. After joyfully settling the final payment, Yixingchen received a discreet box from the security manager. Inside were an AK rifle and a handgun, with only 1,000 rounds of ammunition. After concluding the transaction, the security manager left with delight, and Yixingchen headed to the refinery. Upon observation, Yixingchen was pleased to find that the oil reserve was separated by a tall wall. He didn't even need to infiltrate the refinery. He sat in his car outside the wall and, with a thought, transferred the entire oil reserve to his extra-dimensional space. Then, he casually drove away, just like an ordinary passerby. As for the sensational impact of an oil reserve suddenly disappearing, it was no longer his concern. Glancing through the window at the setting sun, Yixingchen finally relaxed his constantly tense heart. Here comes the apocalypse. May 26, 2023, had quietly arrived. Yixingchen woke up very early, just as dawn was breaking, and sat up on his bed. The impending doomsday was approaching. He glanced at his phone to check the time. It was 5 a.m., leaving only 7 hours until the world's end. The phone screen emitted a peaceful glow, with everyone still asleep. Using his thoughts, Yixingchen conjured up breakfast from his dimensional space before leisurely going to freshen up. The sun rose as usual outside. Yixingchen sat on the sofa, nibbling on a small, steamed bun. Having an entire space of resources gave Yixingchen a sense of security. He closed his eyes and lay back on the sofa, using his thoughts to scan through the items on the shelves. Various medicines, food, clothing, entertainment facilities, medical equipment, weapons, fitness equipment, generators, fuel, and more. There were even clean water supplies that Yixingchen had stored a long time ago. These were enough resources for generations of his descendants to use. With such a vast stockpile of resources, Yixingchen could ensure his survival for another lifetime. He could live longer and better in this post-apocalyptic world. Exactly at noon, Yixingchen extracted a chilled beer from his dimensional space along with 2 meat dishes and a vegetable dish. He didn't rush to eat. Instead, he turned on the TV and tuned it to a news channel. The fortress-like house had been set to a constant temperature of 25 degrees Celsius by Yixingchen. It had long been equipped with generators and fuel, enough to power this fortress-like safe haven and maintain a temperature of 25 degrees. The news on TV hadn't caught up yet, but the screen of his phone was already lit up. Ding! Breaking news, unexpected heavy snowfall. Sudden temperature drop. Ding! Experts believe it's a late spring cold spell. No need to panic. Ding! Official report, citizens, please stay calm. It's normal. No need to panic. Yixingchen looked down at his phone, scrolling through the news popping up one by one. He sneered, then picked up a piece of sweet and sour pork with his chopsticks and placed it in his mouth. This residential area was secluded with good security, attracting many wealthy individuals. The large supermarkets outside the area were already crowded. The majority of the affluent residents here were intelligent, and even though the government had repeatedly urged everyone not to panic, it couldn't stop the widespread anxiety. In May, the temperature should already be approaching 30 degrees Celsius. Even when Yixingchen went out shopping, he'd be wearing short sleeves. This sudden temperature drop caught everyone off guard. Just 2 hours had passed, and the temperature had plummeted from 29 degrees to 11 degrees Celsius. As the clock struck 12, the sunlight weakened, and the sky turned gray. The sun's presence disappeared entirely. The time was now 2 p.m., normally the hottest time of the day, yet the sky was now faintly scattering snowflakes. Yixingchen glanced at the weather forecast on his phone, which displayed a surprising 5 degrees Celsius. In just a few minutes, the scattered snowflakes outside became denser. Initially, the snowflakes were the size of a fingernail, but in a matter of minutes, they grew to the size of a palm. The wind outside began to howl, and in an instant, the snow outside turned terrifying. In the sky above the entire city, there was a sudden appearance of an all-encompassing snowstorm. Watching the footage on the camera, Yixingchen couldn't help but feel a bit nervous. Even though he had created the fortress himself and stored enough supplies in that space to last generations, he had personally experienced an ice apocalypse. Fear still crept into his heart. He didn't know whether this fortress could truly keep him safe in temperatures below -100 degrees. He had no idea how long it had been snowing. The camera screen showed that the accumulated snow was already ankle-dash deep. Yi Xingchen once again opened his phone to check the news. He realized that the news of the sudden temperature drop had already spread throughout the entire internet. Online users were complaining incessantly, expressing their annoyance at how this sudden snowstorm had disrupted their plans. They grumbled about how troublesome the weather had become, given that they had just put away their winter clothes and now had to take them out again. What's with this crazy weather? How is it below freezing? With this situation, the roads might be frozen tomorrow. How are we supposed to get to work? Of course, there were also people expressing happiness. Ha ha ha, with such heavy snowfall, I won't have to go to work tomorrow. Especially among the netizens from the southern regions, many shared pictures of themselves strolling in the snow. There was even a trending hashtag about experiencing snowfall, indicating their surprise at witnessing such heavy snowfall in their normally warmer areas. Yi Xingchen shook his head. This was just the beginning. This snowfall would last for at least another 3 months, and the temperature would continue to drop. By that time, it was unlikely anyone would be laughing anymore. The Ice Age had begun. In the southern city of Jinghai, heavy snowfall covered the area. Some people were complaining, while others were rejoicing. However, apart from Yi Xingchen, no one knew that this snow and temperature drop wasn't temporary. They would persist and worsen. This catastrophic event of mass extinction was something no one could bear. But at this moment, Yi Xingchen was lying comfortably on his sofa, enjoying a scoop of Maodai ice cream he had retrieved from his dimensional space. With his eyes half closed, he savored it with contentment, when suddenly his phone rang. He picked it up and saw various messages from different groups. Messages from school groups, homeowner associations, and even family groups were all becoming active. Damn, why did it suddenly start snowing? We haven't seen snow in decades, and now it's such heavy snowfall. The weather forecast didn't mention this. I was napping in the hotel when I suddenly woke up from the cold. I had to turn on the heater. Sigh, my heater isn't working well. It's been half a day, and it's getting colder. Oh my, luckily I was diligent a while back. I took out my winter clothes to sunbathe, thinking of putting them away after that. I didn't expect to need them today. People were discussing and complaining about the strange weather. Yi Xingchen clearly sensed that most people weren't taking this sudden temperature drop seriously. Some even seemed secretly pleased. Only Yi Xingchen knew that their fleeting pleasure wouldn't last for long. He yawned. He had woken up too early in the morning. Knowing that doomsday was approaching, he hadn't slept well all night. Now, everything was just as he had envisioned. The heavy burden in his heart had finally been lifted. Returning to his warm bed, Yi Xingchen covered himself with the thin comforter, closed his eyes, and drifted off. When he opened his eyes again, it was already 8 o'clock in the evening. Annoyed, he opened his eyes to find the source of the noise. It was Chun Rower's phone called. It had begun. Yi Xingchen smirked, no longer in the mood to sleep. He immediately picked up his phone and answered the call. Chun Rower was momentarily taken aback by Yi Xingchen's icy and distant tone. However, she quickly responded, Yi Xingchen, where are you? Why did it take you so long to answer my call? If you have something to say, just say it, Yi Xingchen replied. Yi Xingchen couldn't be bothered to listen to her hypocritical attitude any longer. It was clear she had a request but was putting on an arrogant facade. Chun Rower was provoked by his words and couldn't contain her temper any longer. Did you already know about the drastic temperature drop? Is that why you stocked up on so many things beforehand? Chun Rower's voice trembled, and in her heart, she kept reassuring herself not to lose Yi Xingchen, her personal ATM machine. Upon hearing this, Yi Xingchen's face was filled with a mocking expression. Just as expected, this woman was always trying to climb higher, acting all innocent. How had he been deceived by her before, unable to see her selfish and greedy nature hiding beneath her surface? Xingchen slipped into his slippers and walked from the room to the living room. He leaned back on the couch and lazily spoke. I heard a friend mention it casually. Who would have thought the temperature drop would be this severe? There was even a thin layer of sweat on his body, a result of the air conditioning's barely breathable chill. He picked up the TV remote and, with his legs crossed, stared at the screen that displayed the vast expanse of snow. The snow outside had already buried the entire street, and even the flower beds on either side were hidden beneath the snow. Although the screen showed the city he had lived in for so many years, all Yi Xingqian felt at that moment was fear and anxiety in his past life. Just like most people, Yi Xingqian thought that the temperature drop would only last a few days before warming up again. It was only later that he realized the snow continued without pause, and that's when he panicked and followed the crowd to the supermarket. But that was already a week after the apocalypse had arrived. Many essential goods had been bought up, and if not for the food supplies sent by the company's CEO, he might not have survived even a month of the snow's arrival. By that time, water and power had been cut off, and those unprepared were left freezing and starving to death. Lost in thought, he was pulled back by Qin Roer's voice on the phone. "Hey, Yi Xingqian, are you even listening to me?" Yi Xingqian let out a tired hum, but Qin Roer continued to chatter. "No wonder you suddenly bought so many things. Seriously, you could have told me about this beforehand. I nearly caught a cold from the cold." Yi Xingqian furrowed his brow and simply hung up the call, not wanting to continue listening to Qin Roer's pretentious blaming. As of now, the temperature drop had just started, and there hadn't been power, water, or internet outages yet, so the TV still worked. Even with Yi Xingqian having a constant power supply, it was likely that the TV and internet wouldn't function in the near future. On the news channel, two anchors were already wearing heavy down jackets. Despite the professional heating equipment indoors, if even news anchors were wearing such clothing, it indicated that the temperature had reached a point where heating was insufficient. The female anchor adjusted herself, facing the camera, and tried to control her trembling lips. Today at noon, a strong cold front swept across the country, causing a rapid drop in temperatures nationwide, averaging a decrease of 40 degrees Celsius. Regarding this sudden cold front, meteorological agencies are conducting research. In the coming days, everyone should focus on staying warm and guard against frostbite. If not necessary, please try to avoid going outside. The authorities will handle this issue appropriately. We hope everyone stays calm, refrains from panic buying, and does not spread or believe rumors. The cold wave will pass soon. Yi Xingqian sneered at the anchor's words. After the Ice Age arrived, survival depended on oneself. Trusting the news and staying at home until the authorities provided updates would undoubtedly lead to becoming one of the first casualties. The top right corner of the TV screen prominently displayed that the outdoor temperature in Jinghai City had dropped to -11 degrees Celsius. Earlier in the day, around 11 a.m., the temperature had even reached 33 degrees Celsius. In other words, within half a day, the temperature had plummeted by 44 degrees. Yi Xingqian casually brought out his dinner from his space. The speed of this temperature drop was exactly the same as in his previous life. The difference was that in his past life, he had frantically searched for warm clothes and bedding, struggling with scarce food supplies, feeling both cold and hungry. But now, he wore silk pajamas, held a glass of red wine, and had a steak for dinner. He couldn't feel the biting cold outside at all. As he sliced the steak, his phone pinged with a new message. Curious about what those who had mocked him earlier were talking about now, he picked up his phone. The message at the top was from Qin Roer. "Yi Xingqian, how dare you hang up on me? The snow outside is so heavy, and I'm so cold. Yi Xingqian, what are you doing? Why aren't you replying to my messages? It's snowing heavily now, and I can't go out. Didn't you buy a lot of food before? I'm a bit hungry now. Can you bring me some? To be honest, I do have good feelings for you. But why have you been so cold to me recently? Bring some food over. I think Chu Yao was wrong. I actually have feelings for you. If you behave a bit better now, maybe I'll give us a chance." Yi Xingqian raised an eyebrow as he read the messages. It had to be admitted that Qin Roer, as Jinghai University's beauty queen, was not only attractive but also intelligent. She knew that with heavy snow like this, there would be opportunistic vendors raising prices, making food expensive. Naturally, she didn't want to venture out in the sub-zero temperatures to buy food, so she intended to seek food from Yi Xingqian, her loyal ATM. After all, in the past, Yi Xingqian had been completely obedient to her. But the present Yi Xingqian was no longer the fool she had charmed before. He saw through her intentions. asking for food, expecting him to deliver it, and claiming it was to test his sincerity. Thinking of all the events from his past life, how Chenroer had deceived him, led him into traps, and manipulated others to kill him, Yi Xingqian couldn't help but smirk. Test his sincerity? What a joke! A playful smile played on Yi Xingqian's lips as he picked up his phone. At this moment, and sent a message back to Chenroer was huddled under two large quilts in her small rented apartment. I didn't stock up that much. Even though the air conditioner in the room was set to 40 degrees, the temperature inside was still below freezing. He sent the message, along with a picture of the steak and wine on his table, screen, intentionally revealing a reply from appearance in silk pajamas. Chenroer was left dumbfounded by what she saw. She couldn't believe her eyes. In such cold weather, Yi Xingqian was actually wearing such thin sleepwear while enjoying steak and red wine. Even though they were in the same city, why did it feel like they were living in two different worlds? She rubbed her eyes and double-checked. It was indeed Yi Xingqian's home. Chenroer immediately regretted her decision. She was genuinely regretful this time. Chu Ya was right. She should have given Yi Xingqian some benefits. Otherwise, she could have been living in a villa like his, not freezing in this shabby rental apartment. She scrutinized the image Yi Xingqian had sent again, feeling like her teeth would shatter from grinding them so hard. This steak was undoubtedly authentic and high-grade Wagyu beef, and that wine must have cost at least 50,000. Her eyes shifted, and she quickly sent a message back to Yi Xingqian. You've cooked the steak nicely. Were you secretly trying to cook for me? You're quite considerate. All right, I've decided to give you a chance. Just pack it and send it over. You know my home address. Chenroer repeated the message several times to ensure its accuracy. Based on Yi Xingqian's previous behavior, she believed that upon receiving this message, he would undoubtedly prepare a new steak and even send over other items from his home. But instead of the response she expected, Yi Xingqian's reply made him look genuinely pleased. Did he really think so highly of himself? He cut a piece of steak and chewed it slowly, then casually picked up his phone to type a message. It's too cold outside. I'll send it over when it warms up a bit. Chenroer's expression changed as soon as she saw this message. What did he mean? The temperature was already more than 20 degrees below zero outside. Even if she managed to get out, the deep snow would make it nearly impossible to walk. Moreover, she couldn't risk driving her Palomila, presumably a vehicle, in this heavy snow. It might get damaged at any moment. Furthermore, she had hardly any warm clothes in this rental apartment. She glanced at her attractive figure and clenched her teeth in frustration. With such terrible weather, how could a beauty like her venture out to buy groceries? As for this Yi Xingqian, she was furious, her fingertips furiously tapping on the screen, but the words she typed out were, Yi Xingqian, you clueless blockhead. I gave you such a good opportunity, and you don't know how to cherish it. You should know you've angered me. Figure out how to make it up to me. Chenroer was undoubtedly angry, but she couldn't afford to lose her composure or her status. After all, she depended on Yi Xingqian as her ATM for daily expenses. Ignoring Chenroer's performance akin to a jumping clown, Yi Xingqian lifted a stem glass and, with a relaxed expression, opened another group chat. As he scrolled down, he stopped when he reached the homeowners group in the villa area. He couldn't forget how, in his previous life, Chenroer had opened the gates to his villa and how these people had gruesomely dismembered and devoured him, both literally and metaphorically. Even more horrific than being dismembered, he remembered vividly being bound in a clear state of consciousness, stripped of his clothes in frigid weather, and having every inch of his skin sliced open. Among these people were residents of this villa area. When Yi Xingqian opened the group chat, he saw a message from Zhang Yi, a resident at the center of the villa area, urging everyone not to panic and to stay home. Zhang Yi M. Yi Xingqian sneered. This Zhang Yi was the one who later got together with Chenroer and, along with others, knocked on Yi Xingqian's door with Chenroer's assistance. It was also Zhang Yi who, along with Chenroer, had suggested the dismemberment and sharing of his body. Yi Xingqian closed his eyes and then opened them again, feeling a chilling coldness in his heart. He had helped this Zhang Yi in his previous life. However, in the apocalyptic world, there was no room for kindness and morals. If he hadn't softened his heart at that moment, thinking that Zhang Yi was a fellow student from the same school and had seen him share his last bit of food with others, he wouldn't have brought Zhang Yi back to the villa. And if that hadn't happened, he wouldn't have discovered that Zhang Yi and Qin Rower had already formed an alliance, and their act of sharing food was just a performance put on for him. Taking a few deep breaths, Yi Xingqian calmed himself down. In this new life, he must seek revenge. Don't worry, everyone. It's just a sudden drop in temperature. It will pass in 2 or 3 days at most. We should trust our officials. Zhang Yi's family had a political background, and his father seemed to hold a significant position. Zhang Yi, on the other hand, was approachable and had some influence in the community. Well, how about we all go out together to clear the snow? Otherwise, the snow will keep piling up, and it will become difficult to even get our cars out. Yeah, Xiao Zhang makes a valid point. Today, I wanted to go out to stock up on supplies, but when I opened the door, there was so much snow that it almost flooded my house. But the weather is so cold. We don't have warm clothes to wear outside, so we can't clear the snow. Yes, maybe we should wait a few days and see. The snow hasn't stopped yet, so it's not a good time to clear it. That's true, but if we don't clear it now, won't the snow become even thicker and harder to clear in a few days? But if we don't go out soon, my kids will go hungry. They're still in primary school and are in the growing stage. We don't have much food stored at home, Yi Xingqian observed with interest, but suddenly, he noticed that someone had mentioned him in the chat. It was Lu Qilong. Yi Xingqian's heart sank. This was BAD.as he expected. Just after thinking this, he saw a message from Lu Qilong in the group. A few days ago, Xiaoyi, you had stocked up on a lot of food. Why didn't you ask Xiaoyi for some? I passed by the other day and saw Xiaoyi carrying pots of food into his house. I joked that he wouldn't know when he'd finish eating all that. Oh, and what a coincidence. Suddenly the temperature drops and everyone's out of food. I wonder if Xiaoyi knew something in advance and kept it a secret from us. Yi Xingqian's expression turned sour. While revenge was on his mind, he hadn't intended to make enemies so early on, especially since his safe house was fortified like a fortress. Even if they had weapons, they wouldn't be able to breach it. Moreover, now that everyone knew he had supplies, they would be watching him closely. People were starting to mention him in the chat, and some were even messaging him privately, asking if they could buy some food, even at double or triple the supermarket prices. But how could Yi Xingqian sell anything? He knew better than anyone that money in the days ahead was just a meaningless number. After a brief moment of discomfort, Yi Xingqian chuckled and redirected the attention back to Lu Qilong. Thank you, Uncle Lu, for reminding me to stock up on supplies in advance. Unfortunately, I promised my classmate Chenroer that I'd provide for her. I'm sorry, everyone, but maybe you could ask Uncle Lu if he has what you need. After all, it was Uncle Lu's reminder that prompted me to prepare early. Picking up his phone, he saw a message from Chenroer. Yi Xingqian let out a cold laugh inwardly. It was only the 3rd day of the snow disaster, and Chenroer couldn't sit still. Yi Xingqian, how are you now? Yi Xingqian raised an eyebrow. Chenroer probably wanted to feign concern for him again. The real motive was quite clear to everyone. Wasn't it about the supplies he had stocked? I'm so bored at home, feeling both cold and hungry, and there's nothing delicious to eat. What are you doing? I noticed you didn't reply to me. Of course, Chenroer wasn't really messaging Yi Xingqian out of boredom. She remembered the photo Yi Xingqian had sent her yesterday. As the temperature dropped, Chu Yao unexpectedly sought refuge in her rented house. Chenroer watched Chu Yao, who came empty-handed, unsure whether to refuse or let her stay. She then thought about the supplies Yi Xingqian had mentioned a few days ago. The way Yi Xingqian put it, he surely had a lot of food stocked. With more mouths to feed, Chenroer certainly didn't want Chu Yao to deplete her stored provisions. Naturally, she thought of Yi Xingqian, who had been drinking wine and eating steak just the other day. I don't have much to do. The snow outside is so heavy that I can't go out to do anything. Yi Xingqian picked up a towel to wipe off the thin layer of sweat on his forehead and put the dumbbell aside. I'm running out of food here. I remember you told me to buy more food a few days ago. You must have bought a lot, right? With his phone in hand, Yi Xingqian entered the bathroom. He filled the bathtub with water, adjusted the temperature, and typed on his phone screen while doing so. I didn't buy that much, but I have enough for myself to eat. Chen Rower's eyes brightened as she read Yi Xingchen's reply. She still thought of Yi Xingchen as the same silly puppy from before. You bought so much. Can you share some with me? I'll treat you to dinner later. Yi Xingchen lay down in the bathtub after filling it with water, allowing the exhaustion from his workout to dissipate. He looked at the phone screen and understood what was going on, as expected. This woman still thought he was the naive guy who would comply with her every wish. Chen Rower's living conditions were decent. The rented apartment had been paid for by Yi Xingchen. At that time, Yi Xingchen had spent a fair amount on buying various snacks and beverages that were popular among girls. If Chen Rower had heeded his words and gone to buy supplies, it wouldn't have been possible for her to run out of food in just 3 days. I'd love to share with you, but the snow is too heavy. It's blocking the doors, and the cars can't get out. I can't come to your place. Sigh. I'm really frustrated too. The things I bought are all perishable items. They might go to waste if kept for too long. Yi Xingchen picked out a table using his consciousness from the dimensional space, placed various dishes from different cuisines on it, took a photo, and sent it to Chen Rower. Of course, he didn't capture the other things he had arranged behind the scenes. After taking the photo, Yi Xingchen withdrew his consciousness, and his wet body returned to the bathtub. The items he had placed on the table were repositioned in the dimensional space, on the other side. Chen Rower was tucked under her blanket, looking at the photo Yi Xingchen had sent. She furrowed her brow in anger. What do you mean by this? Are you intentionally provoking me? Just because I didn't agree to be your girlfriend? Beside her, Chen Rower's best friend, Chu Yao, also poked her head out from under the blanket. Due to the frigid weather, despite Chen Rower's apartment being in much better condition than her own rundown rented house, even with the air conditioning set to 40 degrees, the temperature inside the room was still chilling. Chu Yao had ended up sharing the bed with Chen Rower due to the freezing temperatures. Seeing the message that Yi Xingchen had sent, Chu Yao's eyes lit up greedily, like Chen Rower. Chu Yao is also a beautiful woman with a delicate appearance, though not quite as stunning as the campus belle, Chen Rower. However, Chu Yao's figure was better than Chen Rower's. Likewise, Chu Yao had her fair share of admirers. Under normal circumstances, the items in the photo weren't particularly rare. But Chu Yao, who had been dumped by a wealthy young man she was seeing because he found out she was seeing someone else, had been surviving on instant noodles for several weeks before the apocalypse struck. On the 3rd day of the apocalypse, having grown too hungry, she bundled up all her wearable clothes, took all her valuable items, and sought refuge with Chen Rower. However, she hadn't anticipated that Chen Rower's food stockpile was rather limited. To attract wealthier suitors, Chen Rower had thrown away almost all of the junk food in her house to maintain a better figure. Although her recent messages to Yi Xingchen weren't entirely false, she really didn't have much food left. The few valuable items she had left, she didn't want to share with Chu Yao. Seeing Yi Xingchen's attitude, Chen Rower became somewhat annoyed. It seemed this obedient and easily deceived lapdog had changed in her presence. Rubbing her eyes, Chu Yao, who was snuggled up beside Chen Rower, spoke bitterly. Why is Yi Xingchen being so unreasonable? He has so much good food at home, yet he hasn't even thought of you. We're here, cold and hungry, while he doesn't show the slightest concern. He used to keep saying he liked you. I can see that he's not sincere, just pretending to care about you. Chen Rower was already feeling disgruntled, and with Chu Yao poking at her sore spot, she became even more furious. This wasn't the first time Yi Xingchen had sent her a photo, and of course, she was well aware that Yi Xingchen was deliberately provoking her. She chose to believe that Yi Xingchen still liked her. All of his recent actions were just because she had rejected him numerous times, and he had found out she was simultaneously dating another wealthy heir, which ignited his anger. Everything he was doing now was likely an attempt to make her lower her stance and compromise by actively seeking him out. Don't pat yourself on the back too much. Do you really think you're playing a significant role? It's nothing more than a meal. You don't really believe that he can force you to be his girlfriend just by doing this, do you? Yi Xingchen, you're truly naive. Naturally, Chen Rower held a certain level of disdain for Yi Xingchen. As the campus belle of Jinghai University, she had no shortage of wealthy suitors pursuing her. However, it must be said that someone who had relentlessly pursued her for years, showing unwavering commitment and devotion like Yi Xingchen, was quite rare. Chu Yao couldn't help but feel a bit uncomfortable. Though she looked down on Yi Xingqian, among the people who pursued her, none of them were like him. Someone who was willing to spend so much money despite never having laid a hand on her. Chu Yao pursed her lips. I think, either you should tell him that you're willing to have dinner together and allow him to bring food to your place. Look, you've been avoiding letting him in your house, and now he doesn't even want to come over. Occasionally, you should give him a little encouragement. Chen Roer furrowed her brows. She was somewhat reluctant in her heart. Yi Xingqian was nothing more than a relatively wealthy lapdog to her, not even worthy of being a backup plan. Although Yi Xingqian was good-looking and came from a decent family, he was still far from the billionaire she had in mind. Under normal circumstances, Chen Roer wouldn't have even considered Chu Yao's suggestion. But now,